and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Hello everybody, welcome to Gay USA. I'm Ann Northrup.
And I'm Chris Cooper, in for the vacationing Andy Hum.
Thank you for coming in, Chris.
Always a pleasure, Ann.
Always a privilege to have you, and Andy will be back next week, but we're delighted to have Chris here. I should also add a programming note that for those of you seeing us on Free Speech TV, they're going to go into pledge mode in a couple of weeks. So from September 15th through October 5th, we'll be on a slightly different schedule. If you email andyhum@aol.com, he'll give you the updated schedule on when we'll be on Free Speech, but just to alert you ahead of time for those of you still seeing us on the regular schedule. And in the news this week,
in Louisiana, a federal judge has finally given us our first loss in our string of victories on same-sex marriage. We'll discuss what that means. How bad is it, or is it even bad at all?
Exactly. It's an idiotic decision, so that's good. But it may actually set up the correct conflict for getting us to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, in New York, the St. Patrick's Day parade organizers finally agree to let an out LGBT group march in the parade, but they're not an Irish LGBT group, and this is a complete mess, which we will explain to you in depth.
Meanwhile, Michael Sam looked like he might be without a team and that his NFL career might have been over before it started, but wait, he's saved.
He's made the team, but not the Rams. Several prominent LGBT leaders around the country died this week. We're going to tell you about all of them.
And Anne will tell you all about all the lesbian activity in Colombia this week.
It's an amazing string of stories. The new cast of Survivor on CBS, coming up in a week or two, has been announced, and one of the cast members is that old vicious, racist, anti-gay bigot, John Rocker. You remember him as the pitcher from the Atlanta Braves. And there's a Christian gay couple. Should be quite a season on Survivor. But we will start in Louisiana, where a federal court, a district court judge, the court of original jurisdiction in the federal system, but in the Fifth Circuit, a federal judge decided there is no fundamental right to same-sex marriage, that the state has a credible and convincing rational basis for banning same-sex marriage, that there is a legitimate interest in linking children to an intact family formed by their two biological parents. I don't see them going after single parents or adoptive families. And that there is a legitimate interest in using the democratic process to decide whether to legalize same-sex marriage.
Now, to set the stage a little bit for this, this is the first federal level. So this is not a circuit court ruling like the many circuit court rulings we've been getting lately. The judge's name is Martin Feldman, and this is certain to be appealed. What's good about this is the fact that we now have, for the first time on the federal level, a contrary decision to all the positive decisions we've had, a string of 20 since Windsor up until this one. The reason why that's good is because since there's now a conflict, that makes it all the more likely that the Supreme Court will have to rule on all the cases and come down with some sort of decision.
Exactly. Cases go to the Supreme Court because there is a conflict between states or between federal districts. And that needs to be resolved at the federal level. If everybody agreed, the Supreme Court wouldn't need to issue a decision. And as we've gone along, we've sort of thought, well, maybe the way this will be resolved is all the federal circuits will agree, and then it won't go to the Supreme Court. But now that we have started with this negative decision in the Fifth Circuit, it does, as you say, have to go up through the appeals process in the circuit. But if it, and we have a conflicting opinion from a judge in Texas who actually decided in our favor. And Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas are in the Fifth Circuit. So we'll see how this works up through the Fifth Circuit. But if it comes out with a negative decision for us at the Court of Appeals in the Fifth Circuit, that automatically sets up the Supreme Court need for a decision.
So the Supreme Court could have hypothetically just kind of sat on this for a while, but this sort of accelerates the fact that there has to be a day of reckoning now?
Well, you know, it's only the court of original jurisdiction in the district court in the Fifth Circuit. So, you know, we could end up winning at the Court of Appeals in the Fifth Circuit, and then that would take us out of the conflict arena. So we'll see what happens. But this Feldman's decision is, I described it as idiotic, and I stand by that. He describes in the decision homosexuality as a lifestyle choice. He compares same-sex marriage to a father marrying a child or an aunt marrying a nephew or a niece. This guy just goes on and on with ridiculous things. And this thing about it should be decided by the democratic process, you know, voting on civil rights. We've made the case against that for years. That's an insane way to think of it. So this guy's decision may not hold up beyond his own courtroom. We'll see where that goes.
All right. Well, meanwhile, more marriage news in the Ninth Circuit, which covers Nevada, Idaho, and Hawaii. They've named the three-judge panel that's going to handle those cases, and it's a win for us. The judges are all have made remarkably pro-gay decisions in the past. One in the case of SmithKline versus Abbott, where they held that jurors could not be stricken from a jury pool solely on the basis of sexual orientation, and it applied heightened scrutiny to sexual orientation, which is great for us. Judge Berzon concurred with Judge Reinhart on that SmithKline decision, and then the third judge also gave us a positive decision in an Air Force.
Yeah, a lesbian who was suing the Air Force for ability to serve. It was a don't ask, don't tell case. And yes, one of the first two judges also decided in our favor and part of the Prop 8 case. So yeah, things look very good, and there's a hearing next week on these particular cases from Hawaii, Nevada, and Idaho. And they're interesting because same-sex marriage is now legal in Hawaii.
That's the part I didn't get. What's being litigated on the Hawaii
Well,
level?
there are people in Hawaii, right-wingers, who are still trying to overturn marriage equality in Hawaii, and are challenging the mechanism by which it was made legal. So the federal courts are still involved in legalizing same-sex marriage in Hawaii. And Nevada, of course, is one of the few state judges who turned us down. So we're the ones appealing the Nevada case, so that's interesting. And Idaho is in there, too, with a case. So the Ninth Circuit is interesting, but they've already decided the Prop 8 case in our favor. So we assume that we're in great shape in the Ninth Circuit. Now, there is this rush to see what lawyers are going to be able to bring a case to the Supreme Court. So that keeps escalating, and the lawyers are hiring more lawyers in all these cases. So the latest is that Olson and Boyce, who are doing a Virginia case, have formally asked the Supreme Court to take their case, and they're making the argument to why their case is the best case to be taken. Meanwhile, the ACLU has gotten together, is with Lambda Legal Defense on the other Virginia case, and they've brought in Paul Smith, who was involved in Lawrence v. Texas, and they're putting together their A-team and making their case for why their case should be the one the court takes. And the Utah team, of course, has brought in Mary Bonato and the GLAAD team from Massachusetts to join NCLR, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, and the local Idaho lawyers, and a former Solicitor General of the U.S. They're the A-plus team, saying take the Utah case.
Everybody wants their piece of history.
And the Oklahoma team, which is local lawyers who have the longest standing case, lesbian couples who sued years ago in Oklahoma, and their case just sat there and then finally got decided about 10 years after it had been filed, and they won in the 10th Circuit. They are asking to have their case go to the Supreme Court, and they've brought in some hotshot from Stanford, and they have written a memo to the Supreme Court that lays out all their options for how to decide the marriage case. So they're trying to tell them, well, you could take one case, or you could take several and do it this way, and you could decide it on this one issue, or you could do it on this other issue. They have laid out a whole blueprint for the Supreme Court.
It's reaching the point where if I were on the Supreme Court, I wouldn't want to decide any of this either.
Well, I would tend to throw all these briefs into the air and make my own decision on what I wanted to do.
Well, meanwhile, in Raleigh, North Carolina, or throughout North Carolina, Raleigh, Charlotte, and Fletcher, they're putting pressure on the governor there to not support their ban on same-sex marriage. It still stands. It has not been ruled unconstitutional yet, but since Virginia's ban has been struck down, and that's in the same circuit, they kind of want their governor to give up the ghost on this. Their attorney general, named Roy Cooper, very good name, he will no longer defend their ban, so they're trying to get the governor on board for that.
Yeah, they delivered 10,000 signatures to the governor from around the state asking him to do that. And also in marriage, in North Carolina, the marriage cases there have been suspended pending a Supreme Court ruling on whatever Virginia Fourth Circuit cases get to the Supreme Court. So they're not proceeding on those. But in Florida, they're doing it a little differently. The Third Circuit State Court of Appeals, and that's the circuit within the state, not the federal Third Circuit is something else, will hear the various cases that are bubbling up in Florida. They rejected the request of the Attorney General of Florida, a woman who's been married 3 times.
Pam Bondi.
Yes, to delay those cases pending a Supreme Court decision.
And I think that's better for us. I think the more these cases go forward and we get more positive rulings, obviously the more momentum that gives us.
Absolutely.
And similarly, in Colorado, now their Attorney General, John Suthers, is pushing to have Colorado's cases put on hold, on ice completely. Not just a stay on decisions, but no forward motion, no hearings, for the same reason, let the Supreme Court decide. On the surface, it sounds like a reasonable approach to take, but I think momentum only serves us.
Well, I think the giveaway is that the people asking for all these cases to be put on hold are the right-wingers who are losing these cases.
Of course.
So consider the source of these requests. Back to Florida, the Second Circuit State Court of Appeals had asked the Florida Supreme Court to take a Tampa case concerning a lesbian couple who'd been married in Massachusetts and wanted a divorce in Florida. And so we're waiting to hear whether they'll take that case. But meanwhile, the Florida Supreme Court has agreed to consider marriage cases.
Somewhat related, the New York Times had an article, in case you're thinking all these things are going to the Supreme Court. The Times talks about how the Supreme Court relies on a lot of kind of shoddy evidence sometimes when they make these decisions. The Times reports that
shocking.
that they rely on factual assertions and amicus briefs. These are the briefs that various organizations filed on one side or the other and include evidence, but some of this evidence is incredibly dubious, like Regnera's study. And so this is cause for concern when all of this is going to eventually end up in the hands of the Supreme Court, and they're going to have to decide. So who knows what evidence they'll be working with.
Like most of us, the justices tend to cherry pick the evidence that supports their original opinions on these things. So I don't think there are going to be many surprises there. By the way, the Ninth Circuit sort of finalized legalization of same-sex marriage in Oregon by rejecting the appeal by the National Organization for Marriage to get into the suit, saying that they had no standing to participate. And we know we're headed in the right direction on marriage because Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, who told Esquire magazine in 2006 that they would not marry until everyone can marry, meaning us, they got married. So I guess that, although I think it's because their kids asked them to, and we got far enough that they could claim that they were living up to their promise.
I give them credit for making the stand when it mattered. In Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the land of the Amish / Pennsylvania Dutch, an interesting fallout from all the same-sex marriage rulings, the one in Pennsylvania that legalized it. There are a number of county district judges in Lancaster, 3 of them, who have stopped doing marriages altogether because they feel their religious convictions don't let them perform same-sex marriages. Frankly, I don't have a problem with that. If you're gonna, because they're doing what we've always said.
No, I give them credit. They at least understand that they can't discriminate. That they either have to do everybody or nobody. Which
is exactly what Amy Kelcher in the administrative office of the Pennsylvania court said. She said what they have been told is if they are performing marriages, they cannot discriminate.
Right.
So they've decided not to do them at all.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You don't want to do them, don't do them. Don't do them for anybody.
I mean, we'd rather they did them for everybody, but, you know, that's their choice.
Yeah. You have more marriage news?
Just a footnote from Neil Abercrombie, the governor of Hawaii who lost his primary bid for re-election. He blames it on his calling a special election for same-sex marriage.
Everybody else blames it on other policies of his.
Exactly.
I don't know why he's blaming us.
So that's about that on marriage.
Can we move to the St. Patrick's Day Parade?
Let's do.
All right. You have heard by now, because this was announced this morning here in New York, and you're now seeing this the next day or a couple days later, that the St. Patrick's Day Parade organizers in New York City, notorious eternal homophobes, have now caved to our demands and are allowing openly LGBT groups to march in the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Hell has frozen over.
Well, except that there are a lot of problems with this story. Now, on the one hand, we're all very happy that people think this is what happened because it means that we've won the PR war.
Right.
And the moral war in some way. And people are congratulating me. They're sending me emails saying, oh, you won, isn't this great?
Well, a lot of people worked long and hard for this. Brendan Fay, Anne McGuire, it's a lot of people.
The Irish Lesbian and Gay Organization, the Lesbian Avengers,
Irish
the Irish Queers, the St. Pat's for All, Lavender and Green. This has been going on for more than 20 years. And in fact, started with a bang in 1991 or 2 when a gay group applied to march. They got turned down. David Dinkins was the mayor. He said, oh, well, that's not right. I'll march with this one little subgroup in the parade, and the gay group can march with us. And they did, and they got beer bottles thrown at them. And Dinkins said, I felt like I was marching in Birmingham, Alabama, and then nobody was allowed to march for years and years and years, and well, up until the present time. And we had many protests, and when we all got arrested a lot. And this has just been hell for ever since then. So, and the parade redefined itself as a Catholic parade, so they could have some kind of authority to keep us out of it.
Well, and ultimately, the Supreme Court weighed in not directly on the New York parade, but on the Boston parade. Yeah. But a similar situation, and the Supreme Court said they have freedom of association. They can let anybody march who they want to march because it's a private parade. Right. Fine. That's consistent with our constitutional principles. The problem was the city's response to that, which was that so many city officials continued to march in what had at that point been defined by the organizers as a parade that excludes gays, Irish gays, for no other reason than that they're gay.
Exactly.
And that stamps our second-class citizenship status onto our foreheads.
Well, some officials did not march, and we're very good about that, and some continued to.
But mayors did for 20 years. Well, Giuliani
and Bloomberg. 20 years of Giuliani and Bloomberg with them scoffing at us and and marching happily at the head of the parade.
And saying obnoxious things like, oh, well, we have this parade now, and we have a wonderful parade in June where those people get to march. It's like, no, the parade in June does not exclude people based on the fact that they're Irish or something like that. Right. And if they did, you wouldn't march at the head of it.
So this morning, to our shock and amazement, suddenly comes this announcement that the St. Patrick's Day organizers have decided that it is okay for an openly gay group to march, and the openly gay group that is going to march is the LGBT employees of NBC.
Okay.
Excuse me? So here's the thing. They didn't talk to any of the Irish LGBT groups. Danny Drum, out gay city councilman in New York, called up Brendan Fay this morning of the St. Patrick's for All parade and said,
alternative parade in Queens that developed out of this controversy.
Why didn't you tell me you were talking to the St. Patrick's Day parade organizers? And Brendan said, what the heck are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. He had not heard a word from anybody. He didn't know anything about it. Nobody did, because this is a put-up job between the parade organizers, Cardinal Dolan of the Archdiocese, who is going to be the Grand Marshal of the parade, NBC, which broadcasts the parade, and maybe the mayor. We don't know about the mayor's involvement yet, but we do know that these three have sat down and said, we're getting very bad publicity about this. We now have a mayor who decided not to march this year, de Blasio, because suddenly we have a Democrat in office.
You're forgetting the most important reason.
I'm getting to that. The corporate sponsors are pulling out. Guinness Beer, of all people, pulled out of the parade this year because of this discrimination.
As did Sam Adams and Heineken.
Yes, so that gets their attention. And we were continuing to pound them on the fact that the city was letting cops and firefighters march in uniform in the parade as official representatives of the city. Anybody, they want to march out of uniform in a bigoted parade? Be my guest, but to march as official city reps in their uniforms, completely inappropriate. So we were considering a lawsuit on that. So here's my fantasy scenario. Cardinal Dolan says to these parade organizers, you are not putting me at the head of a parade where these protests are continuing. We are going to do something about this. And the parade organizers say, all right, what LGBT group, and I'm sure they didn't call it that, can we get who are not the Irish queers or even Brendan Fay, much more civil, with the St. Pat's for All crowd? Who can we get who we can put in this parade who looks LGBT but isn't all these ugly people? And lo and behold, they have a corporate sponsor who broadcasts their parade, who have an out employee group, and whose name is out at NBC Universal.
Well, here's the kicker, which is that what they said about all those other groups that are actually Irish and gay and lesbian is, oh, well, other groups can apply in future years.
Yeah, here's what happens when the other groups apply in future years. I'm sorry, we don't have room for you in the parade. We have a limited amount of room for groups, and we are just oversubscribed. So I'm afraid we have no room for you.
We're being very skeptical about this whole thing, as we should be.
Cynical.
Cynical, yes. But there are some definite wins, as you mentioned, the PR win. Number two, the fact that the parade organizers have now stripped themselves of the principle that they've been using to keep gay and lesbian organizations from marching under their banner for all these years.
Although, here's another strange phrase in their announcement. We are continuing to uphold Catholic teachings. So what does that mean? These LGBT groups that can apply to march, or has the NBC employee group agreed not to be same-sex married or to engage in homosexual activity? Have they signed a pledge agreeing that they are intrinsically disordered? How are we upholding Catholic teachings?
Well, here's the best part.
Yes.
Which is Bill Donohue's reaction, the head of the Catholic League, which I like to think of as just sort of a one-man fax machine. But his reaction...
being paid $500,000 a year.
His reaction...
Just like Chad Griffin at HRC.
You can hear the clenched teeth in his reaction.
Yes.
Never in the history of New York St. Patrick's Day Parade have homosexuals been barred from marching any more than pro-life Catholics have. But in both cases, they were not permitted to have their own unit. I have been assured that the rules have been formally changed to allow both of these groups, as well as others, to march under their own banner. That being the case, there should be no controversy. One would hope that all the new entries will conduct themselves in a manner that honors St. Patrick, lest another round of controversy emerges.
Perhaps we have pictures of dead fetuses to look forward to at the St. Patrick's Day parade.
I just think someone is very upset.
Look, point one, we won the PR battle. Point two, this is window dressing and an attempt to whitewash the situation. This is not a real victory unless you like just the PR victory. I mean, it is a PR victory, and we have undercut their whole moral rationale.
And we can build on it. It'll also be interesting to see what happens in Boston now, because Boston has had the exact same controversy for years. And in fact, it looked like they were going to broker a compromise last year at the last minute. It fell through, and Boston's mayor refused to march in their St. Patrick's Day parade. So it'll be very interesting to see what if there is a ripple effect from this.
Well, and we are still planning, this is just hit today. We are still discussing our strategy on this because this is, PR win, great. But real win for the Irish LGBT groups? No, not at all. And we're continuing to insist on full inclusion, particularly of people who are Irish immigrants and are LGBT. I mean, it's insane to keep them out of the parade with their banners. It'd be nice if the NBC group invited them in. But a couple of years ago, the NBC president was a grand marshal or something of the Fifth Avenue Parade. Okay. And Brendan Fay, St. Pat's for All, Alternative Parade in Queens, calls up the LGBT NBC employee group, the one and the same, and says, this is really bad that your NBC president is the grand marshal of this bigoted parade. Why don't you come march in my parade? And in fact, invite him along to take a little of this sting out of his marching on Fifth Avenue. We can offer you an opportunity to show that you're not bigoted, and you as the out employee group can march in this parade. And you know what they said? No.
Wow.
No. And they're the group that is now marching in the Fifth Avenue Parade.
That may be why.
And lest you, I mean, even the Empire State Pride agenda put out a statement saying this is not enough and self-serving, and thank you, Espa. That was a smart thing to do. And lest you think New York is a liberal place, I just want to point out that there's a council member in the Bronx, Fernando Cabrera, who's on YouTube visiting Uganda and thanking them for their anti-gay, kill the gays law. He's running for state senate in New York, and he's been endorsed by the lovely Charlie Rangel, who's mad at his opponent for endorsing his opponent in a previous race. It's a mess here.
New York is always a political mess.
Yes.
Are we ready for other news?
Yes.
All right, a quick note out of California. Oakland is having its, I don't know if it's
They
first.
did last weekend. No, it's their first parade. They've had pride festivals. This just may be their first
So
parade.
while we're on the subject of parades, this was Oakland's first parade, and it was a little leather ambivalent, shall we say.
I think ambivalent is a good way of describing it.
They were trying to keep it G-rated, so they were quoted in the San Francisco Chronicle as saying, or one of their organizers was quoted as saying, "We had some leather groups from San Francisco who wanted to come, and we politely declined. We want to keep this G-rated." Well, controversy, people upset that parts of the community were being excluded. Apology quickly followed where they clarified that leather folks were completely welcome to march, but there would be no nudity permitted. So.
Family friendly. All right. Well, also in California, congratulations to Equality California, which celebrated the 100th LGBT-related bill being passed by the legislature there. This one was to forbid
the use of panic defense.
Yeah, and by criminal defendants who say, he came on to me, so I had to kill him.
Or I didn't know it was a man and not a woman, and then basically this panic was used to reduce charges down from murder to manslaughter.
Also in California, and a former employee of the Little Caesars pizza place is suing for spousal benefits. The company policy only recognizes opposite-sex spouses, and that is illegal. So,
well, it's illegal under California law, but it's not illegal under any federal law. Which
it is now because after they struck DOMA,
DOMA only affected federal benefits, does not affect private employers.
But private employers use ERISA for their benefits, which is a federal way of getting benefits for their employees. I can't swear because I haven't read all the details of this case, but I think they're going to lose. I think Little Caesars is going to lose this
Well,
case.
they're challenging it under California non-discrimination law anyway. So.
Okay, good. Well, and in other lawsuits in Mississippi, Jeff White, who's 32 years old, is, with the help of the National Center for Lesbian Rights, filing suit against the Bethel Baptist School. And he's now the executive director of the Mississippi Gulf Coast Rainbow Center, a really good local activist. They're a state activist. But he was sent to this school because his parents wanted him to get ex-gay therapy. And it turns out that he says a teacher there raped him every week for 3 years to, quote, make him hate men. That was the excuse. That was the ex-gay therapy. And he read about recently the National Center for Lesbian Rights' new program called Born Perfect, which is to help people who are victims of this ex-gay therapy. And he said, you know what, that's exactly what happened to me. And so he is now filing suit against the school as an adult for what they did to him when he was there.
Good for him.
Some years ago. Good luck to you.
Well, another lawsuit, this one not good. In fact, it's very bad news. There are a collection of 5 or 6 plaintiffs in Bozeman, Montana, which just recently passed an anti-discrimination ordinance protecting us, that is suing to reverse that decision, to reverse that win. They're claiming that Bozeman, or that in Montana, local municipalities don't have the right to pass ordinances that regarding employment or housing. And so hopefully this won't turn out to be the case, because it would affect not only Bozeman, Montana, but other communities that have, in Montana, that have non-discrimination, like Missoula, Helena, and Butte.
Helena. Is this the argument that gets made sometimes, that localities cannot pass laws that go farther than state laws?
I think so. It may be specific to Montana. I'm not sure.
We'll follow up on that. Meanwhile, another lawsuit against Grindr. Where have I got that? A New Jersey man who's 52 years old was on Grindr and arranged to get together to hook up with a couple of other guys, younger, but Grindr says that it is not available for anyone under 18, that they have a rule. Well, it turns out that one of the guys he was hooked up with turns out to be 13, and he was arrested. So he is suing Grindr because he claims he had no way of knowing that this kid was that young, and that as far as he was concerned, he was hooking up with adults. We'll see where that goes. But meanwhile, Grindr has another problem. John Aravosis, blogger, has figured out that Grindr's app, where you can see where people are, it gets a little too specific.
Well, what they figured out is that it gives you the distance. It always gives you the distance to the next person.
Yes.
So if you query the distance for people from 3 different locations, you can triangulate exactly where that person is.
Which is bad for people in Iran and Brunei and other very anti-gay countries.
Yeah, it's just, it's asking for disaster. So Grindr turned that function off for a while, and then they turned it back on, saying that this is not a flaw and we don't think this puts people at risk.
Well, they're wrong, it does, but whatever. Another lawsuit filed, this time in South Carolina, by Chase Culpepper. We've told you about this story before. This is a 16-year-old boy who uses male pronouns. He is a boy, but he wears makeup and he dresses in what is regarded as female clothing. And he does this on a regular basis. This is what he looks like every day. Quite attractive. He goes down to the Department of Motor Vehicles to apply for a driver's license, and they say, that's not appropriate for a boy. Take off your makeup. Now, they don't say to women who are heavily made up that they have to take off their makeup for their driver's license picture, but they tell him, who wears this makeup every day, this is his normal daily appearance, that he has to take off his makeup. So he is now suing, with the help of the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, for both sex discrimination, because they have singled him out as a boy wearing makeup, and as a free speech violation. I think he's got a great case, and we'll see where that goes.
Are we ready to talk about the Utah 13?
Sure.
Okay. Basically in Utah, they've been trying to get non-discrimination laws passed for quite some time, and they're experiencing what we experienced here in New York 4 years, which is that the Republican-controlled legislature, the Republican-controlled state Senate,
the Mormon-controlled,
won't even let it come up for a vote. They kill it in committee in secret without any debate, without any hearing. So these 13 brave activists blocked the doors to the Senate Senate chambers as a form of political protest to say, look, you're going to give us a hearing or you're not coming in. And they got hauled off and arrested, and they range in age from 20 to 69, and they have been charged with, I think, what is it, obstructing political process or something like that.
I've been arrested like that many times. It'll be okay.
But what it does underscore, certainly, is if you haven't heard me say it before, I'll say it again. Party affiliation matters in legislatures. It makes a huge difference in terms of what we can get done. So if you think, oh, my Republican legislator is a good guy, he's pro-gay, I'm going to vote for him, you may be empowering the bigots because they count numbers, they count the heads in the legislature, they apportion power that way, the winner takes all. You're asking for trouble. Party affiliation matters in legislatures. If you remember only one thing.
It certainly does at the moment. You have to be realistic. And that brings us to Florida, where Charlie Crist, former homophobic closet case Republican governor.
Now married.
Now married to a woman, still not out, but a Democrat and pro-gay. It's quite an act in Florida, has won the Democratic nomination for governor against the incumbent Republican anti-gay Rick Scott, who has been endorsed by the log cabin Republicans because, quote, we're not a one-issue group.
Only in Florida.
Thanks.
Only in Florida.
Okay. In other hopscotching, a couple of other local political stories, the Cincinnati City Council has approved transgender health coverage for city employees. That's a good thing. Scruff,
which is a social networking app for gay people, has announced that they've launched something called Benevolades, which is a chance for nonprofit organizations to have free ads on the application, so that when someone goes to use Scruff, they will see a free ad from 80% local organizations that are nonprofit. Nice. So they estimate that'll be about 1 billion impressions and a $1 million giveaway.
Back in Florida, a lot of Florida news this week. In Atlantic Beach, the right wing was trying to gather signatures to put a measure on the ballot in November to repeal the local Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, Non-Discrimination Act. They failed to gather enough signatures. The Non-Discrimination Act stands in Atlantic Beach, Florida. And congratulations to Michael Botticelli, out gay man, in recovery 24 years. He is the new director of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. He's been the acting director since March, and now he got the full job.
Obituaries, or
well, first let's congratulate Michael Sam, who has been through a lot and who has conducted himself with dignity and good humor, and had a great football preseason.
I know nothing about football, but from everything I read, it was like the guy was doing really, really well.
He had 3 sacks. He had 11 tackles in 4 games. He did as well as anyone else at his position. He's still regarded as a little too limited in his skills. And the St. Louis Rams, who he was playing for, are chock full of defensive players like him, so they did not keep him. You can be on the regular roster of 53. You can also be on the practice squad of 10, which gives you a good chance of moving up to the regular team for injuries or getting thrown off the team for beating your girlfriend.
So Michael Sam got cut at the final cut.
Yeah.
He did not, there was a chance he might get picked up for that 10-person practice squad. That didn't happen either. It looked like no other team was going to pick him up either. And then
America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, have brought Michael Sam onto their practice squad because their defense, I would say the S word, but I'll just say stinks. So they need Michael Sam, and they're going to give him a chance. And
so he will be number 46. I think what this really, to put it in context, it kind of underscores the homophobia that still lingers in the NFL, that this man almost went without a team.
Well,
despite his tremendous performance.
He did have a tremendous preseason performance, but there were still questions. But here's the thing. First of all, there was a horrible story on ESPN where this female reporter talked about him, delaying showering to be sensitive to his teammates. Total garbage, totally untrue, just nonsense and horrible. But I think what happened was that a lot of teams just didn't want to deal with it. And they didn't have to deal with it, so they didn't deal with it. And so they could just pass and not say anything and not be accused of being homophobic. But if he had been straight, if he hadn't been someone who was the focus of a lot of news attention and someone who they regard as a distraction, although what they think of all their violent misbehaving players is a whole other issue. Why he should be a distraction is a question we could talk about for a long time. But they kept hands off. They said, we don't have to deal with this, so we're not going to deal with it.
So maybe the Dallas Cowboys decided to deal with it because they have previous experience dealing with gay players like quarterbacks?
Yes, they certainly have that. They also have an owner, Jimmy Johnson, who loves the spotlight, so he just sees this as more money in the till, and he couldn't care less about why. And they need help. They're a mess. They used to be a very powerful team, and they're a mess now. And they can use all the help and all the attention.
Well,
they
congrats
can get.
To Michael Sam.
Yeah, that's great news. So yes, we a lot of stories this week, strangely, of people who we lost, who were very unexpected stories. In Minnesota, Kevin Phillips, 48 years old, who was a vice president at Boston Science and a very prominent activist and philanthropist in Minneapolis, shot dead at a gas station by his ex on the eve of his wedding to his current fiancée. Terrible story. Hundreds of corporate, political, and LGBT leaders at a memorial service. Huge loss there in Minneapolis. I don't have the town, but a young trans activist, Andy Cray, 28 years old, died of cancer. He was very well known for writing Medicaid laws around the country that included trans care, and health care was his specialty. Very tragic loss. Many people mourning that.
In Detroit, Michigan, there was they're calling this unknown person a gender non-conforming or transgender person. It's a curious story because they have a suspect in the murder. The person was murdered by someone they say was an intimate relation of this, or intimate partner of this person. The suspect is Eduardo Moss, but they still say they don't know who the person is, so I'm not sure how that could be. But that's the latest we have on the story, and it is the 6th transgender or gender nonconforming person to be killed nationwide since June.
They're a very famous couple who started the Point Foundation in 2001, which helps LGBT people who've been rejected by their families go to college and supports them like full ride for 4 years. It's a terrific organization. Started by a gay male couple, Bruce Lindstrom and Carl Strickland. Carl, 40 years old, was killed in a boat accident in Lake Tahoe this last week. Again, a huge and unexpected and tragic loss. And finally, in Seattle, A prominent lawyer there, a woman named Shir Kung, 31 years old, was out riding her bike and was hit by a truck. She had worked with the ACLU. We have a picture of her with her fiancé, first of all, on the case of Major Witt. Now that's her with her baby. That's her with her fiancé. Thank you. She's on the right. Worked on the Major Witt versus the Air Force case. She leaves her fiancé and their baby. Can we go back to the baby picture? Because that's so cute, and the baby is just adorable. Look at the smile on that baby's face. Shir Kung, 31 years old and dead. And terrible story. Finally, well, a couple things. Mills College, a women's college in California, and Mount Holyoke College, a women's college in Massachusetts, have both announced that they will happily welcome transgender students. This has been controversial at some women's colleges around the country. Smith has had a lot of problems with this. They rejected a transgender student as not having enough consistent gender markers through her paperwork, but Mills and Mount Holyoke have both said, look, if someone identifies as a woman, we're happy to have her, whether she is trans or born a woman or whatever. And if women come here and they decide that they in fact want to transition to being men, they can stay here. We're not going to kick anyone out who transitions while they're here.
That's positive.
It's very positive and progressive. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, shall we move on to international news?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. So, first of all, in Mexico, another state has legalized same-sex marriage. This brings the number of states, because it's state by state there, much as it is in the United States, that brings the number of states up to 3, though if you're married in any one state, you're recognized nationally. So, the new state is Coahuila, and it was passed by a 19-to-1 vote in that state.
It's the first state legislature to do it. The Federal District of Mexico City did it. Some courts have done it, but this is the first state legislature to actually vote for this. Now, I have to go through the Colombia stories because this is mind-blowing. First of all, in Colombia, in South America, 2 members of the president's cabinet, who are both women, announced that they are in a relationship with each other. The Minister of Education and the Minister of Commerce, Industry, and Tourism. Congratulations to them.
Meanwhile,
2 members of Congress, who are both women, are in a lesbian relationship, and they have now been challenged by a lawsuit from a right-winger who says that 2 members of the legislature cannot be in a relationship. This is nonsense, but this is what they're facing.
Plus,
we didn't even rehearse that. The Constitutional Court of Colombia decided last week that a lesbian couple who were living in Germany and became partnered there, and had one of them gave birth to 2 kids, and then they moved to Colombia, and they petitioned for the non-biological mother to be recognized as the second mom. The Constitutional Court has okayed this and has therefore legalized second-parent adoption by same-sex partners of the other's biological kids.
Now, it doesn't do anything yet about non-biological adoption, but the hope in Colombia is that this is a first step towards their constitutional court tackling that as well. And it's significant because what we've seen around the world is that in a lot of places, even when laws become liberalized about lesbian and gay relationships, it doesn't always follow that that adoption goes with that.
It's strange because we've often noted that adoption is often the last thing that gets legalized in even Europe, whereas
particularly in Europe.
Yeah, it's for the most part been legal here a lot longer. In Jamaica, a gay activist there has dropped his legal challenge to the anti-sodomy law. He had just too many threats of violence against him and his family, and he said, you know, they're not ready for it. I can't take this. I'm stopping this.
And hopping back down to South America, a Chilean sailor, Mauricio Ruiz, has come out of the closet, and this is apparently a big deal because Chilean military person has done this before.
Yeah.
So it's progress.
Congratulations to him. And a councilman came out in Chile, too. There's been a lot of movement in Chile. And in Grand Bahama Island, to go back to the Caribbean, activists abandoned a pride event there at a hotel. Too many death threats, the hysteria on talk radio. The local LGBT community did not show up for the event, just a few organizers and a few people from out of the country who heard about it and came. And it was just too much panic, too much threat, and they canceled the events.
Meanwhile, in Australia, there was an interesting juxtaposition because you had the World Congress of Families going on in Melbourne. It's this annual thing. It's coming to Utah next year, God help us. But it was held in Melbourne, Australia this year. There was a lot of controversy. Activists really turned out to raise their voices. About 100 of them blocked access to the venue where this thing was happening after it had been moved from several other venues because the places kept pulling out because they didn't have insurance.
Catholic churches.
Including Catholic churches.
Yeah.
It was making big headlines in Australia, apparently, especially because several government leaders who were supposed to speak at this conference kept pulling out, especially once it became associated with Catching the Fire Evangelical Ministries, which is very right-wing. And that was juxtaposed in the headlines in Australia with the Bingham Cup, which is this gay and inclusive rugby match that occurs once every 2 years. And that was going on at the same time. So the two headlines were competing. And one was, all this negativity, and the other was very positive. The U.S. ambassador showed up at the rugby matches. And congratulations to the Sydney Convicts, who ultimately won this year's Bingham Cup
Sydney
competition.
Convicts?
Australia.
I know that's the history.
But and in case you're wondering, Bingham Cup is named after Mark Bingham, who is the openly gay man who died on one of the 3 airplanes, the one over Pennsylvania that crashed. Supposedly,
on 9/11.
Yeah, they expect that they rushed the cockpit.
Yeah. We see what's going on in Ukraine and Russia attacking and invading and taking over Crimea and all of this. Well, just in case you think they've forgotten about the gays and all this, the senior official in Crimea said, we do not need such people as gays in the new Crimea. They're enforcing the Russian law. And a terrible story. There's a BBC sports anchor named Jessica Creighton, and her girlfriend is a woman named Christina Fontes, 27 years old, a translator and activist. And Christina is originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And she went back there for a trip with her mother and family relatives. And she gets back to the Congo. We have a picture of her. And she's held captive by her family. Her mother takes her passport away. They are trying to force her to change her gayness, and they won't let her go until she submits to some kind of conversion therapy. And meanwhile, her girlfriend is a BBC anchor and is trying to get the world to put pressure on the family and the Congo to release her girlfriend.
They're trying to get the British consulate involved so far. Mixed, not very good results.
Yeah.
And quickly, the top 10 travel destinations for closeted men, according to a website survey of its members, misstravel.com, are number 1 is Chicago, Illinois. After that, Sydney, Australia, Maui, Puerto Vallarta, Vancouver, Las Vegas, Rio, Orlando, Buenos Aires, and Minneapolis. Top for closeted gay men. And Ed Salvato.
We're a full-service program, but let's move on.
Okay.
AIDS news. On September 20th in West Hollywood Park from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., that's a Saturday, there will be an inclusive blood drive to demonstrate to the world that it's okay for gay men to donate blood. Some will bring friends to donate on their behalf. West Hollywood Park, September 20th. And a strange story from California where a guy, Thomas Guerra, 29 years old, is accused of deliberately infecting men with HIV. He's, again, a lot of hysteria around this. He's called a sociopath, a sexual predator. He's been ordered to stay off Grindr. And there's all this stuff about a duty to tell. Now, the duty is to protect yourself and take responsibility for yourself.
That's the bottom line. You've got to protect yourself.
Do I think people should be out deliberately spreading HIV? Of course not, and I don't know whether he was or not. But you want to keep yourself safe? Keep yourself safe.
It's early, but there's a potential promise in a 3-drug combination that was used in mice to shock and kill the AIDS virus, drawing out HIV from its dormant or from its
I resist
pool.
these stories until we are further along.
It is strictly in mice, so it's nothing to get excited about.
Research continues. Does that cover it for the next 10 years until we come up with something?
Well, how about some health news then?
Okay, but we got to get to entertainment news. We only have 3 minutes left.
Oh, that's true. Well, LGBT Americans have less health insurance than their straight counterparts.
Stop the presses.
Okay, entertainment news, yes.
New season of Survivor. John Rocker, he was the Atlanta Braves pitcher who years ago was quoted as saying, "Oh, New York, you have to get on the 7th train to Shea Stadium with queers with AIDS and foreigners and some dude who's been out of jail for the 4th time. I really don't like all those foreigners in New York." Well, he's going to be on Survivor now. And there's going to be a Christian gay male couple on, too, who say what they want to bring on Survivor are their Bibles. This should be an interesting season.
I want to address what Ann said last week about why Love is Strange got an R rating. Actually, the writer-director, in a question and answer after the showing I saw, said that the reason why it got that rating is because they used the mother effer word, and apparently they use it like 5 times, and apparently any use of that gets you an R rating.
Well, they must have wanted an R rating then, because it would have been simple not to use that word.
I don't know. It didn't seem like they wanted it, but that's why they got it, supposedly. And I also want to put in a plug for Through a Lens Darkly, which is a new documentary by Thomas Allen Harris, which is superb. It focuses on the black experience as seen through the eyes of black photographers, and he is openly gay, and he actually managed to include some reference to the gay family members that one sees in these photographs often. And it also talks about how we craft our images as minority, as outcast groups. When we get to craft our images, it changes our self-esteem, it changes our place in society. And that's very relevant for, I think, us as lesbian and gays and transgender people.
Okay. A viewer pointed out that as we were bemoaning the lack of Emmys for The Normal Heart beyond Best TV Movie, we overlooked the fact that Sherlock Holmes was pretty gay. And so, fine, I accede to that. And Benedict Cumberbatch, who starred as Sherlock Holmes in that, is also starring in the new movie, The Imitation Game, about Alan Turing, which is a Harvey Weinstein production and will be out in November. You want to keep an eye open for that. And you might also want to keep an eye open for the movie Pasolini, about the gay Italian director Pier Paolo Pasolini, supposedly murdered by a trick. Willem Dafoe will play him. That's at the Venice Film Festival right now. And we are out of time. And thank you, Chris Cooper. And
my pleasure.
Andy's back next week. Write him at andyhum@aol.com to get on our mailing list. We'll see you next week.